right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. The conversation continues even during the break. We'd like to hear your views. Did the 844 system serve its purpose? If yes, why? If not, why not? We'll come to your tweets in just a bit at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. But Honorable Nabi, we're coming to you in the Sosion raised fundamental issues. Now, the way CBC has been crafted is that it is now a skills-based rather than examination-based or knowledge-based system. But Sosion says even then, systems have not been put in place that are good enough to make sure that happens.
Trevor,
are we jumping the gun?
Trevor, it is very clear, whichever model of education you want to run as a system, there are fundamental things that must be in place. One, there must be a policy framework that people believe in, that policy framework, and are willing to implement it. Secondly, there must be structures to deliver that model. Thirdly, you must have the human resource capability to deliver that. And finally, you must oil it. You must have funds to run the system. Of all those things, there must be accountability, somebody accountable, right? There must be a champion. Up to today, I've been asking even in committee, I've gone on record, who is the champion of CBC? Machogu? Or who is it? Or is it Bellew? Who is the champion here? What Sosion is saying is critically and fundamentally correct. That it does not matter which system you run. If you don't have structures of running it, you don't have human resource capability to run it, you don't have a clear policy direction, then you are crumpling in the dark. And for God's sake, as we close up the 844 system, we seem not even to have learned lessons. 39 years is not far away. The journey we have traveled for 39, we have not taken lessons home. And one of the key lessons here is that you cannot run an educational system without adequate human resource.
Yeah.
You know, we still are burying our heads. Those who had me on the floor of the House will tell you, I was very clear on my contribution on the budget, and I still am very clear in my mind that we have taken grade 7 to grade 8 and taught children. They have not been adequately taught. Two teachers teaching over 9 subjects, you are lying. You are now going to have a grade 8 in January without adding an extra teacher. And that's what Sosion is saying here, that please, for how long are we going to fit into somebody's clothes? If we want to run a country that must develop economically, technology is critical. We agree. But it is not critical to the point that we state it's critical. It is critical to the point that we are willing to walk the technological journey by investing in an educational system, by providing structures, by providing everything that we require. Yeah. Sosion has said that there's a problem. In the parent ministry, they don't have quality assurance. Fact. It is dead. We are trying to revive it. We try to, you know, you can imagine with over 298 sub-counties, some as vast as my constituency, with over 128 primary schools. The sub-county directorate of education was 1. The CSOs were 2. Yeah? The curriculum support officers, there were 2. No vehicle. no vehicle. Sometimes you tell them, you call a sub-county director of education, you are reporting an issue in a school, they have no idea. I can tell you, I have known schools where the sub-county directors of education, they have never visited because they have not been facilitated.
But as the members of the education committee, how much responsibility do you bear when it comes to speaking truth to power?
Let me tell you, you have to look at the texture of our politics. At the point that you are now, for example, fighting for resources, the competing interests shift. You even move away from a noble idea like this, you now go back even to political parties. So let me ask you a question. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Just for the purpose of our discussion here, why would you increase money for NIS and not give money? Capitation, the school. You know, Association will tell you 1,000 shillings 400 has been in existence for
2003.
Since 2003. And you are talking about free primary education. And you are not able to give that money. You are giving 730.
Okay.
Which you don't account for.
Which you don't account for. If you ask a question today, which I've asked, and I want to thank the Auditor General, because we asked for a special audit, that the money for textbooks, how is it spent? The money for activity fee, how is it spent? Infrastructure money, how is it spent?
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. This is the accountability mechanism we are talking about. Yeah. If you don't improve on it, and therefore, even the money you invest in the educational system may go to waste.
Okay. Anyways, let me bring in on this, because we were talking about the skills-based versus exam-based, and I asked a question earlier on. There are more than 8,000 students out of the 1.4 million who scored 400 and above. But there are also 2,060 who scored below 100. So what happens to these 2,060? Because those who are arguing for CBC say the reason why 844 doesn't work is because you're using the same yardstick to measure everyone. It's like expecting a fish to go up a tree.
The problem is if finally everyone is expected to climb the tree, because unfortunately, because we are talking about few opportunities, and you cannot rule out the role that education plays in terms of transforming our lives. And we've lived with that history, that's how we've been socialized, that education will most likely improve your fortunes. Most of the children who score those low marks are actually children from poor families. They are children attending public schools. So which means that they are already deprived, and therefore they're already starting off on a wrong footing. Meaning that they'll go to day secondary schools, again, which are ill-equipped.
Deprived.
Again, deprived of that opportunity of education. So this is why we've said that the people who desperately need education for upward social mobility are getting a raw deal out of it. And for a very fundamental reason that governments, will they be service providers or will they be regulators? Because the challenge we are having over here is that you have a government that is at the same time providing services, and the same government is actually supposed to be a regulator. So inherently there is that conflict of interest that when government does not give you your right to quality education, where do you seek for remedy? And the accountability structures in this country have completely collapsed. And I'll give you a very simple reason. Today, in January, the Minister of Education was conducting a readiness assessment on all schools to determine which schools will host junior secondary schools. Interestingly, for any private school to be approved, any private school that was approved to provide JSS had all the necessary requirements. Yet the public schools which were approved didn't even have 40%. So you wonder why governments would ask private service providers to have certain things, but on the other hand, where it is providing services, it cannot even offer 50% of them. That is what explains what somebody called defaulting by not defaulting. You can default, you can move the I mean, we have what we call officialization of data. You have no capacity to question this data. If government today wants to tell us that every student in a public school has passed exams, you have no way in which you will invalidate that information. I can give you a very good curve, and like for KCPE, it's given as a very nice curve. We don't expect the same when it comes to Form 4. It will not be there. So the fact of the matter is that we have to be a little bit bold and ask ourselves, how do we fix the accountability frameworks? And then number two, how can we now begin to grow our own local solutions to the problems that we are facing?
Yeah.
I have been to a number of private schools. I've been to a number of them. And I've seen the level of innovation that is happening that demonstrates that, yes, if you are very, very intentional, you can get what you want. But what we've created as a country, we've created a divide, public and private. And yet at the same time, we want to listen to solutions from outside the country. It can't work. Yeah. Solutions that are coming from outside Kenya are not going to solve our problems. We can sit around and find a local solution to the challenges that we face. We just have to be bold. We just have to accept that we need to put in place accountability mechanism. So Susan and I, we've argued for this thing. SCAC, from the time Mutula Kilonzo put it in the Basic Education Act 2012, we've asked, why is in their Education Standards and Quality Assurance Council? What did it need? It has never been put in place.
It was
Matiang'i just dismissed it. Magoha came, he became the prefect of CBC. And now, Honorable Mashogo, I don't know what he thinks about it. I have no idea. Tomorrow he'll get an honorary degree. That is fine, but we need to ask, if you don't invest in accountability, what is going to happen? You cannot keep resources up here and you expect that schools are going to function. It's not going to work. And that's why we've said from the beginning that if we do not correct these fundamental issues, unfortunately, we have already thrown away the baby with the bathwater.
Okay.
Trevor, just something small, which he has alluded to. Yeah. The numbers you are sharing with us here at the low of the pyramid in the results basically speaks to you the rot in the education system in Kenya. The not working parameters. If you look at the top 10 students.
Private schools.
Look at the top 10 students. You will hardly get a public school. What does that tell you? It tells you three things. Thing number one, that curriculum supervision in private school is adequate, is better than curriculum supervision in a public school. That's thing one. Thing two, that the facilities in a private school are better than the facilities in a public school. And yet, government is supposed to be the one setting standards. So this government school should have better facilities because you are the one setting standards. Number three, which is critical, is that the human resource capability in the private school is up to it than the human resource capability in the public school. What I mean by that is you look at the ratio. Trevor, and Susan will bear with me here, you would go to a school in Kenya, a mathematics teacher is handling 4 streams, and each stream has 80. Which teacher? I mean, which teaching goes on there?
Back at the end of it.
Exactly.
Back and give homework.
And that's why I'm telling you, even this thing, we are very enthusiastic, shouting everywhere. Unless we address the things we are still depriving. Many people have asked, why did the Education Committee persuade the country that we need to remove this thing of categorization of schools? Because it is the deprivation that we have had.
Yes.
Yes. Why would you be taking 100 million to Alliance Girls, for example? Does it need it? And yet, Kotek Primary School, as a secondary school, does not even have a library. It does not even, the CBE of that school is 18. It has 2 TSC teachers. So what are you talking about here?
Okay.
The poor should continue being poor.
Dr. Chepkamoy, you see, you have the one who's done a lot of research around this.
Yes.
So they're all talking about accountability.
Yes.
And I asked a very simple question, that which one is better, exam-based or skills-based? Yes, they both may have their challenges here and there. But we have a situation where more than 8,000 people have scored 400 and above. 2,000 are less than 100. Maybe these 2,000 had better skills elsewhere, not exam-based. But then there's the issue of accountability when it comes to
tested.
Many people are saying, if all the students are going to move to the next grade anyway, what then gives the teacher the morale to even ensure that they are properly taught, even the student themselves? So which one is better based on your research?
In my own assessment, I would say a skill-based system of education would be better, given that if you are looking at the kind of students that we have, the kind of learners that we have, there are different capabilities. And if we want to leverage and strengthen what every student can bring on board, then the skills way is the way to go. If you look at this lack of, I would say, transition, or the over 200 learners who, or rather, the very many learners that didn't score the 200 mark, it already spells doom for those learners, because forever it will be known that they scored that particular mark. It takes me back to the aspect of policy. You know, the one shoe fits all policy, where we are saying we want the 100% transition, regardless of the mark that the student has. And yet, there are other avenues that these children can pursue. So it's more about what we can do and how we can make the students give the best that they can be. If you look at this transition story as well, we are looking at students from various backgrounds. Of course, that is already a factor that limits. We are looking at students of various genders, and I'll bring in the girl here. And of course, if you are poor, for example, and if you're a girl, that already limits you in a way. We are bringing in the aspects of gender, disabilities. You know, children who are abled differently. If you look at the top candidates in the history of this country, I have not seen a learner who is abled differently, apart, of course, from Goldalin, that, you know, top. But it's not an everyday outcome that these students make it to the top. And yet, they have the capability. It's just that we need to probe. We need to really support these learners, and we need to ensure that they are getting the best that the system can give them. If you look at the majority of us, I included, our children, especially at the primary level, do not go to the public school system. And yet, resources are put in the public school system. And yet, teachers are trained. You know, those who teach at the private schools are teachers who have trained at Regi Teachers College, at Kericho Teachers College. They go through the same system of training, even at the university level. If you look at such a state of affairs, I think I'll bring in the policy aspect and the monitoring and evaluation aspect, and agree that the private schools have put in place systems, have put in place structures that make the teachers accountable, that make everyone in the school system accountable, including the parents. You know, you have to pay your school fees. That already is a role that the parents play. The public schools, if you call for school meetings, you'll hardly find parents going in there to discuss. You'll find very few, and from our own evidence, it is the mothers who go, not because they don't have anything else to do, but it is because of the kind of attachment that they feel like they need to be in the school system. So there are so many other things that come into play if we are to say we want to get an equal playing field for all the children in this country. But accountability is the one that takes the lead, and using the evidence that we generate, even as an organization like ours. We are currently doing the assessment, the Action for Life Skills and Values, the ALIVE, which so much focuses on competencies and skills. And one thing that we are realizing is that children of 6 to 12, up to 17 years old, come out of school and do not have the right skills. And we are talking about the soft and the hard skills, the technical skills. If you go to the employment industry today, the same products of the 844 system of education cannot be able to put these skills into use because it is more of a theoretical kind of an orientation. Yeah. So there is need to fine-tune, there is need to pull the strings, but what is major is the accountability aspect, so that the resources go to the right places. And I will still go back to the countries that have made strides in terms of education. The kind of investment that goes into the education, even in the budgets, are high. The kind of investment that goes to the teachers. Look at our teachers. We are looking at early childhood education. And we are saying that for you to be a teacher at ECD, you can even come in with a D+. You can even come in with a C. If you look at very many countries, for you even to be a teacher at that level, the lowest that you can have is a master's degree. Correct. The lowest that you can have is, you know, the kind of glamour that we have for architecture, for engineering, the A's and the B pluses are those same people who get into the teaching profession. And there's a lot of years of preparing these professionals. You even earn a certificate. You just don't become a teacher. There are a lot of assessments. If you look at their kind of supervision, you'll realize that, you know, everyone in the system is part and parcel of these checks. Okay. So it is something that we need to think about, and more importantly, every one of us need to play the role.
So, Sion, so what do you recommend going forward? We are here now. So 844 is a shutdown. We are heading into CBC. There are those who are saying that it is okay because we don't want to leave no man behind in the CBC system, the transition. There are those who are saying that brings in a lack of accountability in itself. So what do you recommend going forward?
Yeah, I think we've engaged in a lot of talking as a country in terms of education. It is now time we shift from words to action. And action that every Kenyan understands, actions that all Kenyan professionals are involved on day-to-day basis. And if you look at the delivery of quality education, regardless of the model, there are three variables. Number one, quality infrastructure. No choice. We must invest. Teachers. We cannot be having schools, deplorable schools, where kids score 100 and something marks, while others are privileged and they score 500, simply because of that is inequality. Kenya must conform to the international commitment of equitable quality education for all children, regardless of background. So that if a child walks to a public school, you get exactly what you will get in a premium private school. Why do you have private primary schools in Kenya? So many of them. They were shortcuts for children from able families to secure places in premium national schools. And that explains why we've cut throat competition in exams. The problem is not exams. The problem is competition for limited spaces. It's not even the education system. So variables. Number one, quality infrastructure. Number two, quality teaching and learning tools. So when you tell teachers, be creative, be innovative, that is a weak way of avoiding investing in quality teaching and learning tools. Let us walk to Olympics Primary School in Kibera, grade 1 class, and you will see a teacher manipulating ICT software in teaching and in delivering teaching. And let us find a class in every public school not exceeding 30 learners, complete with quality teaching and learning tools. Training teachers. Quality teachers is a driving factor. And in fact, when you look at all these models, even implementation of CBC, let's not cheat ourselves. We must go back to engage in a conversation of looking at availability of teachers for all the subjects that have been prepared for the curriculum. Those are three variables. And I'll come back and ask TSC, of these 56,000 teachers who have been employed in the last 1 year, How many are technical teachers? Are they available in every school? How many are teaching foreign languages? Are we satisfying the structure and the curriculum model, or we are simply employing and making a general public policy statement? And then number 3 is national leadership. I think now the Ministry of Education should shift closer to the heart and the desk of the president and be controlled firmly. And this ministry should be elevated to the level of the Ministry of Interior and National Security. And there are I propose three areas that must, from time to time, the president should be able to handle directly, so that we eliminate cartels, laziness, and corruption at the ministry. Number 1, school audit. The school audit must be strengthened. And the head of the national audit, the president should be able to interact with that person from time to time, other than being managed from the ministry. Because we've got a collapsed school audit. And if we ask today, the money that was sent, even 1,400, let's agree, that is,
we can't account for it.
Can we account for it? What has it done in school? Has it gone to the benefit of the learners? Even as Parliament negotiates for increment of the same, is the audit working? And then we have seen systematic efforts to destroy the school audit. And it is wrong even for the Ministry of Education to outsource audit services while it has auditors in almost every county. So that is 1, school audit. Number 2, quality assurance. The ESCAC that has been supported, it is in law. Mutula Kilonzo put it. I participated and I saw the sense of having a completely independent, strong education standard and quality assurance department, fully financed, council, so that it can audit the ministry. It's a mirror to the minister, a mirror to the peers, and give national report on the status of education and in county reports and reports of every school. Every school must have a quality assurance report. And of course, the quality assurance and standard officers should be able to monitor and work with teachers from time to time and fix the gaps. Let us not wait until we have colossal challenges, then we begin convening task forces. I think it has reached a time we do away with the task forces. Let us deal with what we have. And if you remember the time of Moi, this Office of Quality Assurance was called Inspectorate. And when the president needed an inspection report, he would get it directly from the Chief Inspector of Schools, not the minister. So this is one office that should be able to periodically report to the president. And then lastly, we must have a strong research and planning unit at the ministry, and the various sagas like KICD. They should be able to give us periodic research work and data from implementation of curriculum. The Kenya National Examination Council, research, because we cannot drive education without evidence-based, so that when we come to the studio here, we should be able to interact with data that is generated from research. So with these serious pragmatic reforms, I visited Malaysia, and there is a whole planning department in the ministry. And when you are building a school, say in Nyakach, it is directed from planning department in terms of infrastructure, designs, the number of teachers, and everything else. We must take education seriously and more, and I think it should be elevated and taken closer to the presidents, where certain sagas, the president should be able to deal with them directly. Because if we leave it to the cartels, who have reigned supreme, and they are running the show. Why did somebody, for example, decide to kill education standards and quality assurance? We don't have it now. And an expert here in research. In rollout of curriculum, monitoring and evaluation is a critical stage. We don't have it. It is not working. So what really are we doing? So there are a lot of salient issues. Now that there is a presidential working party with the recommendations, those recommendations should be implemented, and a lot of reforms and restructuring of the entire education sector undertaken as a matter of urgency. But if we leave it for this casual conversation and only monitor them in the talk show we will be back here within a few years with even bigger problems and bigger challenges.
Okay.
I just want to start from that point because when the task force was set up last year, some of us spoke very strongly of it and in support of it, that there was need to have a presidential working party away from just a mere task force set up by the ministry. And it's for the same reasons that Wilson has brought up. When this report came out, Mheshimiwa Nabii and I were on this site, and this is part of what we argued against. You cannot tell us that in the process of reforming our education, you failed to reform the institutions charged with the responsibility of implementing the same curriculum.
We failed
it from day one. So that very recommendation in the Presidential Working Party that took 98% of implementation responsibility to the Ministry of Education is misplaced. And that's why I totally agree with Sosion that what we need now to do, in the spirit in which we created the Presidential Working Party, that the Ministry of Education was only supposed to provide the Secretariat services. It has now come to a time when the Ministry of Education should be taken to a higher level, where Interior is, where National Treasury is, where economic issues are discussed. I have been a strong proponent of. Honestly, Mwai Kibaki left us giving us less than 200 billion. Uhuru Kenyatta left us giving us over 560 billion. William Ruto has taken this conversation to another level of almost 800 billion. And you're still telling us that we are again in the same circle of complaining about resources. It is not going to work that way. This is the time for us to take this conversation where it is supposed to be. The institutions charged with implementing education in this country must be reformed. It is not a question of should. It's a question of must. And it should be undertaken so urgently. Honestly, you cannot have some institutions, even with a paltry 500 staff. They cannot even implement their own responsibilities. They cannot just be, it's basically being lost in the routine issues. The second aspect that I wanted to bring out as part of taking this conversation forward is to begin asking ourselves, where things are working, what is facilitating things to work? There is a narrative which has been sold to us that our teachers are not properly trained. But they are the same teachers teaching in private schools getting these results. Our teachers are not poorly trained. I'm a trained teacher from Kenyatta University, and I'm a proud teacher from Kenyatta University. All of us were trained well. It is the circumstances and the environment in which we are working that makes it extremely difficult for us to deliver, whether it is skill-based training, whether it is knowledge-based, whether it's skill-based education or knowledge-based education. If we do not deal with these salient fundamental issues, it doesn't matter. Even if you brought angels down here, they will not be able to get the kind of results that we want to get. And one of the things that we now need to begin asking ourselves is, to what extent can government accept that it can take responsibility in terms of managing, and what are now the new innovative ways of allowing us to manage our education? The fact of the matter is that what ails public schools is the scale at which they operate. Today, if you have got a single most innovation, we are talking about private schools here. The reason as to why private schools can flourish is, today if this Warutere man performed well, it is not difficult to convene the board of directors at Riara to sit and make a decision that will improve Riara. But this cannot happen in the public spectrum. We maybe need now to think about how do we ensure that education can be taken to where it belongs. And I want to give this contrary and popular opinion that it is not right to tell the poor that they cannot contribute to the education of their children. This is part of why, this is part of the bigger problem. The moment you are telling them that it's free education, how do they understand? You abdicate your responsibility. I think it's now the highest time we sat down and asked ourselves that what do we need to do to ensure that every person can take responsibility. The moment you are telling the poor that it's free education, what have you done to them? You've told them that anything that goes, it is enough. I think that is the highest time we go to say that no, let's do things a bit different.
Nabii.
Now, Article 53 of the Constitution is very clear on the fundamental rights, and one of them is quality education. As a country, if we want to get to where we need to be, number one, we must depoliticize and de-emotionalize education. Whereas it sounds good to hear Sosiona and Kaburu talk about elevating education ministry to where. That is not the issue. The issue is that people charged with the responsibility to manage a system must manage it well, must be accountable. If you put square pegs in round holes, you will not get it. That is the problem in the educational sector. Today, look at the university, including the one where graduations are happening. Universities in the Ministry of Education have everybody acting, a vice chancellor acting, a deputy vice. That tells you the rot in the Ministry of Education. They are not up to it. They can't get it right. So please, let's address the right things the right way. Secondly, do we need the divide we have today between public and private? The answer is no. But who has ensured that we have the divide? It is the policy makers. And therefore, let me tell you a story here. I've gone through both Nation and Standard. Some of the best students who scored over 400 come from my constituency. Public school. Because I've done something the last 1 year in public school. The best girl got 480 from Macho Muslim primary. Her name can't appear here. It's not even captured. My hero yesterday was Ben Olaka, a teacher in Chimoi Primary School, a public, who said, my child must be in the school where I teach. And he has produced a child of his own son, of 406 in a public school. Now, what am I trying to say? Even the own people who run the education system do not have faith in the public school. So we take our children to private school. So how will it work? How will it work? We must have faith in the system we run. If we don't have faith in the system we run, then there's a problem. Thirdly, can I ask that this thing we are hearing about the presidential working party, good work, wrongly finished. What am I saying? You cannot, a big multi-sectoral report of that nature and just say the minister is the implementing agent. The same minister who has failed, the same ministry, that the ministry is the implementing, the same ministry having structural issues. How will they implement it?
Okay.
How will they? This is something, and that's the only, actually, to implement the Presidential Working Party report on education, maybe that's the only area I agree with Sosion, that we need an office in the office of the president charged with implementing that report.
Okay.
So that it can look at the structural problems in the Ministry of Education.
All right. There's a lot of feedback coming through. Let me bring that up, and then we just have a few minutes to wind up this conversation. So out of the feedback, I'll give you a chance for closing remarks. 1 minute each as you close, and I'll start with Dr. Mary Chepkemoi there. But let's see what you're saying. Moses, Mayor, says something is wrong. If the system as currently is working, then we should have a very small percentage of candidates getting less than 200 marks out of 500. Invest in teachers. We have quacks. So Sion Wilson is right. Integrate rather than replace. Okay. Gabi says it was really a system with its ups and downs, especially for Class 8 candidates. Today, the last of this kind are edging to watch curtains fall for the KCPE exams. This lot will go down the annals of history as the last lot to ever sit for KCPE. J.M. Musoma says, to end 844 discrimination, we must remove postgraduate grade consideration. Why demand professionals who transition from diploma to degree programs to have a minimum university entry grades in KCPE before admission to TSC or Kenya School of Law, yet they took a longer route? Okay. Gabi again says it was really a system with its ups and downs. I think we've read that already. Let's bring up the next one and see. Okelo Mwalimu says 844 system should have been reviewed and improved on instead of being scrapped off. The punitive summative assessment in the name of KCPE should have been replaced with continuous assessment tests in classes 3, 5, and 8. Kenya isn't ripe for education system overhaul. JM says the only way CBC can have impact in future livelihoods of Kenyans is to convert junior secondary schools to technical training institutions that every student must go through before joining Form 1. Imagine having students who can repair their school bus or even broken desks. Okay. Leonard Wasika says the system of 844 was superb. We shall live to remember how it has produced sharp minds in the world. The system kept an individual on toes because one couldn't pass exams by guesswork. You worked hard for it. I doubt if CBC will completely replace the 844 system. I really doubt. Okay. Engineer Nazaro says Mr. Sosion raises fundamental issues that needs to be taken in for considerations. Where was he when Kenyans were presenting their views to the committee of experts? Otherwise, I doubt Ruto choice for education CS. Mashogu will not deliver. Okay. All right. Daktari, closing remarks.
Mashogu myself.
Very key things.
Yeah.
As a way forward. One thing is that we are looking at these results, and we haven't taken time to look at the starting point, even of these children themselves. One thing, as a research organization, over time we've conducted assessments. We've always said our children are not learning. Our children are not getting, the right competencies and skills. But there's a little bit of reluctance in looking at, the root where these children are coming from. It has been authored that the very first 1,000 days of a child are very key. And these first days are the 0 to 3 years old. What happens in the home environment? Are the parents stimulating children? Are we preparing children to get to school? And when they get to school, are we receiving them in a way that makes them look forward to coming to school each and every day? Are we investing in early childhood education in a way that we should invest? I look at the kind of financing that we have currently, and I think the county governments are currently, taking lead in the early childhood teachers, and yet the national government takes care of the basic. So is it? It is time to actually look at these key things, and of course on the fact that it is our responsibility to ensure that we are getting it right from the start.
Okay.
I looked at and listened to the CSS speech yesterday about learners who missed out the examinations, the KCPE examinations, and will be sitting exams in 2024 January. These learners are going to sit exams. Supposing one, comes out with 430 marks, for example, are we going to go back to the drawing board and say, now the leading student has 430 marks? So I think even as we think of these learners who missed out, are we also going to consider, for example, the 200 and below scorers, and say that we can give them another chance, so that they can correct, sometimes things happen and students are not able to make. And you see, this is like a point of break or do or make for these particular learners. Like I said, it defines you. But again, I look at KCPE as an important, given that it is a summative examination. Sometimes teachers put in more effort to ensure that they shine. Okay. A teacher can have a choice of going into class and knitting sweaters and doing whatever it is that they want to do, and will not care simply because it doesn't really come out that a certain school didn't perform or a certain learner didn't do well. So what are the measures that we are going to put in place to ensure that all these things are brought to the fore?
Okay.
More importantly is the policies.
Yeah.
And like I said before, is there a way that we can look at policies that are there? They are very good. They just need to be well implemented.
Okay.
But at the same time, can we look at the policies that are there and see the best way in which we can strike a balance so that it takes care of everyone else or every student, because quality is paramount.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. We have to leave it there because we have to go into another conversation of ending GBV by theatre in just a bit. So stay with Citizen TV. We're just in fact, just
Trevor, just one thing.
We really ran out of time, and this is commercial. I have to take a commercial break now. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, so much for making time. We're back in just a bit.